Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming to our virtual education workshops here at the Arlington Home Show and Garden Expo. For our next workshop, we have our local celebrity, Chad Hackman, with Alair Homes. He is going to be giving a nice presentation to do about home remodeling. So please, Chad, take it away and give us a good presentation as you always do.
Thanks, Jorge. This is, again, Chad Hackman with Alair Homes, Arlington. We are a builder and remodeler here in Arlington. Actually live in Arlington Heights, near where these home shows first started 10 plus years ago when they were at Patrick Henry Elementary School. And I have 4 kids in Arlington schools now. I've remodeled my own home, as well as majority of our projects are here in Arlington. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to keep it pretty simple in this presentation. This document that you see here, this project protection checklist, is something that we give at one point or another to all of our clientele when they're looking at building and remodeling. It's something we talked about early on. The key, there you go, the key to any good project is to make sure we plan it appropriately. And as some folks have said in the past, we want to make sure we've planned it several times on paper before we've actually started breaking stuff or digging in the dirt or anything like that. We want to make sure that we've checked everything out as best we can. Here in Arlington, we have several different styles of houses. There is a whole slew of houses that are built in the 40s and 50s and into the 60s that are all brick and block. So those are relatively predictable homes. Those are what you see in your colonials and your ranch styles, some of your capes. A lot of those houses have, because they're brick and block, they have no insulation in the exterior walls besides what the CMU block provides. And then there's a little bit of furring strips on the inside walls, and then some nice thick plaster. And so that is your insulation quality in those homes. We also have a good selection of homes still remaining from the 20s or 30s. Bungalows is what we would call those. They are from, you see a lot of those in Maywood, but they're sprinkled throughout Arlington. A lot of those are your Sears kit homes. The houses from the teens and the 20s that fit those bungalow things, they usually are pretty predictable in their challenge. They are all wood frame construction. They are balloon framed. What that means is that the first and second floor walls are framed continuously up to the top. One of the challenges with most of those style constructions is there wasn't really any engineers that were really thinking about footings at that time. So a lot of those houses, the block walls or whatever the foundation walls are, instead of sitting on a traditional spread footing, which is somewhat wider than the wall, they just sit there right in the dirt. Or you could run into a situation where there's stacked stone or something laying in the dirt that is supporting those foundations. So a lot of those houses from the teens and 20s and earlier than that, we have to do some upgrades and some whatnot to the foundation, some checking out of the foundation. And then there's the new constructions that are after that, the 60s and 70s and 80s. That is the wild, wild west of our home construction in Arlington. We don't know where the quality is or what it is. There's some high quality homes built in that era. There's some low quality homes in that era. The codes and requirements, after having all these brick and block bunker style homes before that, were not, when they started going back to wood frame construction, and that's when they started using vinyl siding a lot, or some of that sometimes a little bit of asbestos siding was left over. So there's large degrees of quality issues of those style homes. Yep, you're only seeing my first slide. That's all we're going to look at today. This is our project protection checklist, and I'm just going to go through this one by one for the next 20 minutes or so, and talk about what you really need to have to do to prepare for an addition or renovation in your house here in Arlington County. And although it says it's the first item on the list, it's really not the most important item on the list. The first item on the list is your zoning requirements, and that is, I'm sorry, your first item on your list is to have your ready to price drawings. Those are good, but that's really towards the end of the items that you want to have. The first thing you want to do is to confirm what you have to work with. In Arlington County, there's setbacks. Now, most of you are living on houses that have a zoning requirement is R5 or R6 for most of the houses we have here in Arlington. If you have R5 or R6, that means that you have to have an aggregate of width of 18 feet on your property. So if you have a 50-foot wide property or a 60-foot wide property or whatever that is, you subtract 18 feet from that. If it's 55, you have 32 feet of which to work with. And if you get into that sort of situation, you also have 25 feet from the front and 25 feet from the back. And I'll show you a quick example of a plat or a survey that you'll want to have that will help you understand what this situation is. So this is where I live down on South Jackson Street. This is not by any means a new plat. You might be able to see down here that it's back from who the heck knows when. But this shows the place that I live. I'm 34 feet off of the front property line. I have 11 feet on one side, and if you do the math, I had about 10 feet or whatever on the right side. So this tells me that I can go back a little bit, but it's only a 6,000 square foot lot. So I don't have a great deal of room to go back, and I have a little bit of room to go forward. So when you're looking at this addition, you may have a property like this that, and if the zoning ordinance only came into effect in Arlington County in the early 1950s, a vast majority of the houses were built in Arlington County well before 1950. So if your house was built before 1950, it very likely will sit not exactly to current zoning requirements. It might sit a little too close on one side or a little too close on the other. There's properties in my neighborhood here in Arlington Heights and Penrose where they are less than 8 feet from both property lines. They're only 20 feet from the front yard setbacks. So the first thing that I do when I'm going to come out and look at your house or talk to your house is I'm going to ask you if you have a copy of your plat or your survey. Any of you that are living in duplexes in Arlington or any sort of multifamily arrangements, your setbacks are also slightly different. And it's important to understand what those are. And if you are, as an example, if you are less than 10 feet off of your side yard property lines and you're off the duplex, side of your duplex that you do not share with your neighbor, if you're less than 10 feet off of that line, you are going to have to go before the BZA to do any sort of addition or modification to your property. These are critical items to think about before you go down the whole road of thinking about, what kind of addition or renovation you want to do. And it's also very important because you don't want to make an arrangement with the contractor to do some sort of addition, give them a deposit of some sort, only to find out when you enter the permit process that you can't do the addition. That leads to my second important item about the viability with the local municipality and permitting authority. You want to make sure in Arlington County, lot coverage is the most important item to worry about. If you have a 5,000 square foot lot, an R5 lot, R6 lot, there's R8, there's R10, all those different zone lots have a different percentage of lot coverage you can cover. The folks up at the BZA and zoning will tell you that they'll be relatively flexible with setbacks, because of when the zoning ordinance was implemented, there are lots of good examples of houses that sit a little closer to the property line on one side or the other, a little closer to the street on one side or the other. And if you can go and prove that, you can get what they call a code exception, which allows you that setback relief. When you go over, and that is a relatively low bar, it's not a real low bar, but it's relatively easy. If you can find other examples of other houses in Arlington with similar setbacks, you will more than likely, as long as the neighbors agree and everybody else is happy, you will get that setback relief. But if you're on a very small lot and you want to build over whatever the relative percentage is, so I've seen some lots that have been cut up over the years or chopped up, and they might be an R6 or an R10 lot, and they're only supposed to cover 30 or less percent of the property, but it's a small lot. You're going to have a whole lot of trouble going over that percentage. And I'll give you a perfect example of something we did this year. We looked at a property that the house was built on this lot. It was an R10 lot, which has a relatively low percentage of lot coverage. It was a 10,000 square foot lot. They built a reasonable size home on this lot with around a 2,000 square foot footprint. But with driveway and everything else, their lot coverage, I think, was supposed to be less than 30%. Whatever the number was, they wanted to add a screen porch. They already had a deck on the back of their property. So they assumed that they could build over top of that deck, no big deal, let's go. But in fact, if the deck is less than 30 inches or less than a certain number of feet off of the ground, it doesn't count against your lot coverage. As soon as you make that a screened-in porch, which with COVID especially, everybody has really been excited about getting relief and getting those outdoor living spaces going. As soon as you entered into that covered porch, that counted against their lot coverage. We did some initial back to the envelope conversations and calculations and thought we could make this screen porch. I think it may have been initially 300 square feet at the first. It could have been a little bit less, it could have been a little bit more. But what happened is the first thing we did is we did a hard analysis with the county's involvement and with the civil engineer and everyone else. So before we entered into the contract to start drawing plans and everything else, we discovered that, in fact, because of the lot coverage issue, they can only be around 200 and some square feet of screen porch. And that wasn't enough for them, enough space for them to make it work. I have a question here. If you're not changing the footprint for a remodel, do you have to worry about setbacks? Yes, you do. You want to pay attention. You can, generally speaking, you can go right above your current setbacks, right above your current footprint of your house, no problem, except, and you've all seen these across Arlington, lots and lots of people have the old side porch that has been enclosed and is now living space. And that is a lot of times not within your setbacks. Arlington County will still ask you for permission to enclose that. So that'll still have to count, and you'll still want to check your setbacks. So we get this conversation a lot of, why do I need to have a plat survey? I don't have one. I'm just doing a whatever to my house. I'm not doing anything that's any that big a deal, because the county, no matter what you're submitting for a permit, the county will always ask to see a copy of that survey. But in general, if you're going straight up from your existing footprint and there's no previous enclosed porches or anything like that, you should be in pretty good shape. But think hard about it, because a lot of these previously enclosed porches don't look like previously enclosed porches anymore. They look like something far different and more of a part of the house. One of the things we do backing up to our 1920s houses, when we're submitting and we're doing any sort of work on a home that is going to increase the load on the existing foundation. For instance, we're taking one of those 1920s Sears kit houses and we're adding a second floor, we're expanding the second floor, or we're doing an addition to a 1940s house that also goes a little bit over the top. Like I lived in a Cape Cod style home, so we were expanding the size of the second floor because it had those little dormers on it. Any of those sort of activities, you're going to be required to verify that you actually have real footings under your house. So somewhere in the permit process, the county is going to ask you to have an engineer certify that the foundation, the footings are good. And the only way to do that is to dig. And so you will be required to dig up some corner of your house. You can do it from the inside or the outside, but to verify how big the existing footings are and to make sure that you have an existing footing. So there's lots of those initial checks. Now, someone like myself who has lived in Arlington County for 20 plus years and we know these sort of restrictions pretty well, we can do it pretty quickly. But we always, if there's any areas that we're not absolutely sure on, we always engage the county and their departments to make sure that we're good with. There's a gentleman up at the county that I have that is in charge of the variance process and the BZA process, and I probably have a conversation with him at least once a month to check on some project that we're in process with that we have questions on their zoning. Once you're good on the zoning side, and once you determine that you have enough room to do whatever you want to do, that's when you can go in there and start to put some ideas together. Now, you want to get an idea of where you're at with budget. There's some long recordings on my YouTube page and other areas where we have conversations with architects, and we run into it all the time, where architects are, most of them will be honest with you and tell you that they don't know what things cost. They hope they know what things are going to cost, but they don't know what things are going to cost for sure. So it's a good idea to have conversations with the contractor early on that is building and remodeling in the area from which you live, so you can get a good feel as you engage with that architect or designer to start drawings. We have lots of discussions with our clients about what sort of, they want this sort of addition. And I'll tell you, in Arlington, and if you live in Arlington, you know this for a fact, most additions center around a real master bedroom suite, a real kitchen, and actual closets. And those are the most exciting things for most folks to have in their home, as well as screen ports and outdoor living. So when we're looking at those spaces and we're trying to develop a range of cost of those spaces to figure out if it's worth the client's time to go into the drawings and whatnot, we're really working with a wide variety of costs. And we can legitimately have 20, 30, 40% difference in relative cost when we're doing that back of the envelope sort of calculation. I have hard evidence of two homes I built that were exactly the same, and just the style of finishes that they put in the home was a 20 or 30% difference in cost. One of my favorite examples in this style of conversation is you think of your kitchen. The kitchen is the most expensive room in your home to renovate. You think about the different components of your kitchen. You think about the appliance package. The appliance package, I can give you a great deal of information on the cost of your renovation of your kitchen if you tell me what kind of stove that you want. Most clients, if they stick with the 30-inch wide stove that you probably have in your house now, the most expensive version of that 30-inch stove is probably $1,400 bucks. The cheapest version of that 30-inch stove is probably $600 or $700 bucks right now. And then you have a standard size refrigerator and a dishwasher. A standard size refrigerator might be a couple $1,000 bucks. A dishwasher might be $800 bucks or so. So you can get, if you stick to that 30-inch stove, you can get an appliance package of $5,000 or $6,000. If you go to a 36-inch stove or a 40-inch stove or something like that, you don't even have to go all the way to Wolf or Miele or one of those sort of models, but all of a sudden you're in the range of cost of $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $15,000 for that same stove. So you're really opening up so you can take that same appliance package and you can have a perfectly functional kitchen appliance package that can be less than $10,000 or more than $40,000 just in your kitchen alone. That's a, whatever, a 400 or 500% difference. If you think about your cabinets, and you think about, many folks get excited because they see pictures of pretty shiny cabinets and they think those are fine, that'll work for me, these will be great. And then you get into the details of the cabinets. You need to go out there and touch and feel the cabinets at some point. Most of the cabinets we put in are all plywood boxes or wood boxes with wood doors and all that sort of fun stuff. There's a lot of cabinet manufacturers out there that really lower their costs by putting MDF or some sort of non-wood product in their cabinets. And that just means that the likelihood of your cabinets falling apart in a couple of years is probably pretty high. But you can find those cabinets for $4,000 or $5,000 or $6,000 for an average Arlington kitchen. Or if you go to the standard all wood construction, you're probably in the $15,000 to $20,000 range, maybe close to 10 if it's a smaller kitchen, but you're in that wider range. So you have a couple 100% difference just in your kitchen alone. You can keep this conversation going by going off to your countertops, and you think about granite used to be the coolest thing in the world back 10 or 15 years ago. Now granite is a little bit of a commodity, and so granite for an average kitchen is maybe $5,000 or $6,000, maybe a little less, a little more, depending on how many square feet of countertop that you have, and the Cambria or the engineered quartz, the high quality engineered quartz. And we say it's high quality quartz because it's very pure quartz. It doesn't have a lot of fillers and other stuff in it. That might be $10,000 or more for the average kitchen. So you really want to kind of think about these and figure out where you're at before you go into putting these drawings together, because you don't want to get yourself sucked into drawing something that you know that you're going to want to put nicer windows in, nicer kitchens in. And if the contractor you're working with is not pricing it, he's pricing with allowances instead of helping you get the exact cost for the exact things that you want to put into your house. Those are a hell of a lot of change orders and surprises they have later on in the project for you. So as we're doing those drawings, you want to work closely with somebody that is going to actually build that thing and has relative relationship to cost. And you should not, when you're working with an architect or a designer or a draftsman, once they go into permit drawings, it gets to be a large scale pain in the butt to change those drawings. So if you can get to floor plans and elevations, many architects will call it a bid set or something like that. When you get to those floor plans and elevations, you can get, about 80% of the cost pretty well nailed down if you want to. And you can certainly get a pretty good idea, and you can certainly lessen that range quite a bit of overall cost. So when you're looking at your planning process, you don't want to go out there and draw complete permit drawings that are ready to submit for permit, and then go out there and start interacting with the contractors, vendors, and suppliers, only to find out, and this happens all the time, especially in this COVID world. I recently saw a set of plans that the architect had determined and the clients had determined they had a $400,000 budget, and when I priced out the plans, it was $600,000. Wasn't even close. That's why you need to work with a team, contractor, architect, everybody involved that you really trust. Because once you draw those plans, as we look at our checklist, we also want to write those detailed scopes of work, and we want to get those fixed bids on each and every aspect of the project. When I say that is going back to our kitchen example, we want you to go out there and actually pick out your kitchen appliances. This is more true than ever right now with COVID, because just like you can't find a car on the lot anymore because of those stupid little computer chips made in Taiwan somewhere that are slowing everything down, most appliances are 6, 7, 8 months lead times. I sit in a group of other builders every once a month or so, and for the first 10 minutes of those conversations, they talk about all the challenges they've had with appliance orders and how they've ended up telling the clients just to go to Home Depot or Lowe's and just pick out whatever's on in the showroom and buy it and move on. So we want to not only provide firm fixed price bids, we want you to make selections for this stuff, but we want to be able to back out your selections so we can hit your lead times. Because if you're doing a kitchen renovation alone, a kitchen renovation should take really no more and no less than 6 weeks. But we have to have all the cabinets there. We have to have all the appliances there. Otherwise, you could tear up your kitchen and be waiting for that refrigerator or that whatever for forever and ever. So we want to make sure that you're getting those selections made. We're getting those bids made. We're clarifying your scopes so we don't have any allowances. We're writing in the exact trim details. Nothing's more frustrating than to get into your renovation project that you think you negotiated the fantastic deal on, only to find out that you didn't pay attention to the interior doors and the contractor installed the cheapest, crappiest interior doors that you could ever think of, or that he installed the most inexpensive trim, or whatever it is. The other thing in COVID right now, with material prices going so haywire, you want to make sure that you have really tight agreements so you get to control how you're going to react to the market if the price of lumber continues to go up, or some sort of material price gets out of whack. You do not want the contractor to come back to you and say, okay, you owe me more money because the lumber went up, or the price of lumber went up, so now I need to switch out your floor because I was going to do the sand in place hardwood, but now I need to do an LVT because I got screwed on the cost of lumber. So we want to make sure we get those firm fixed price bids in there. We want to make sure you're making all your selections. We do not want you to do any of this we want you to do all of this before you sign a construction agreement. There is a method in the design build world where they will have you sign a construction agreement on concept plans, and then take a bunch of money from you. And after those concept plans are developed, then they'll do a change order to adjust to your final scope. And that's when you hear all these horror stories of the clients walking away from a $10,000 deposit or more, or even more, because they thought they were designing a $200,000 edition. Right before signing the agreement, they found out it was a $400,000 edition or something like that. So we want to make sure we're acquiring all those professional estimates on all aspects of their project on those drawings that are those complete drawings. And you want to get the pricing on the hard stuff first. The project is driven by its size eventually. The finishes, the cabinets, the tile, the appliances, the windows, those sort of things, that's in general for a large renovation, that's about a 30-year cost. So a 30-year cost has got a lot of variables depending on what you actually pick. So if you know you want the big addition, I've had this conversation with our clients in the past. If you know you want the addition of a certain size, then you should figure out what the concrete's going to cost and the wood framing's going to cost and the siding's going to cost before you go out there and figure out what kind of kitchen you can put in there, because you may have to adjust your kitchen dreams or your tile dreams or your window dreams a little bit to get to the project size of the scale that you want. So you're making selections for every product, feature, and trim. And then you want to get into schedule. We hit on a little bit with your kitchen schedule. You do not want to have, right now we are flooded with inquiries in our business. We are talking about how challenging it is to, everybody wants to get started next week, tomorrow, or whatever else. So in closing in here, before we answer any of your questions, make sure that your contractor has a schedule laid out that is reasonable, defensible, and accurate. And make sure that you understand all the lead times for all the particular materials. You can walk around your neighborhoods right now and you can see projects that seem to be sitting because they have no windows or have something else. And that's because there's some sort of material delay that is slowing that project down. And then obviously make sure you have visual to this budget all the way through so you can comment on the budget all the way through. So I'll leave it there. Does anybody have any questions or any additional questions? You can throw them in the chat. I'm happy to help out. You can also reach me directly through my website, send me an inquiry, or give me a call at any time. swing by. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Chad. I'm going to remind everyone that the presentation is being recorded and it will be posted on the Home Show and Expo website. That's going to be available next week. Now we go to the first question from Caroline. It's if you're not changing footprint for a remodel, do you have to worry about setbacks when even if your historic lines don't meet current standards?
Yes, we talked about it briefly in the presentation. If you're going straight up from the straight up from there, you need to pay attention to it. If you have a porch or something like that that you're enclosing, you need to pay special attention to it. But in general, you should be able to go straight up from the original footprint of the house, not including porches or anything that were closed in since then. But you should be able to go straight up from that, no matter when it was built.
Okay, thank you. I think we don't have any more questions. So I'm gonna let Jorge do the ending of the presentation. If he's available, please.
Right.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Chad. Now, let me ask you a quick question, Chad. That's something that people always ask me when they see a successful contractor like you. How small work will you do in a house?
I've lived in Arlington for over 20 years. In my neighborhood, I've run into lots of folks that have lots of questions. I would encourage everyone to just call me and ask. If it's something we generally in our work, the more moving parts, the more complication, the more value we add to the clients. But we are happy to provide referrals and to set you up if the project is something outside of our scope. But as a member of the community here, there's not too much we won't look at.
Great. We have a question early for another contractor that I want to post it to you. Do you work also on condominiums?
Yep. It's important to point out, though, that the condominiums are, by Virginia code requirements, are considered commercial. So your contractor that works on that project on your condominium has to have a commercial designation in his license to do that. It's a different set of inspectors. It's a different overall requirement. A lot of times the condo association will have specific requirements all the way through. They'll want to see documentation on everybody entering the building and how they're going to enter the building and abide by the work hours and those sort of things. The approval process within the county is different. And like I said, the inspection process is different because it's considered commercial.
Great. Now I see we have it on your landing page, and I invite everybody to visit Allaire Homes landing page here at Home Show and Expo. We have something there about that you win a prize, your company, for a basement remodeling. How is that compared with doing a accessory dwelling that some people are thinking about doing now, and just better just do a good basement remodeling?
So there's two questions there. If you're refinishing your basement in Arlington County, the overall Virginia code requirement for occupiable space is 7 feet. Arlington County has adjusted that and gives you a couple inches because a lot of your basements are less than 7 foot clear. So if you're remodeling your basement for your own use, you can be an inch or two below that 7 foot and be okay. Now, if you're far below that, we've had situations where we've done additions to homes and we've lowered the basement in the addition, but we kept the original staircase. And so to walk from we couldn't get permission really. We had to get a special exception to walk from the stairs to the addition because that was 6'6" or something thereabouts. And we couldn't do any remodeling work in that area, but only in the addition. Now, an accessory dwelling unit is hugely popular here in Arlington right now because of what Arlington County has done and because people are at home and are looking for more space. In general, you can do accessory dwelling units in two different ways. They can be separate structures, or they can be a part of your existing house. If they're a part of your existing house, they have to have their own entrance. They also have to have, they have to be all up to date with all current requirements. So you have to have that full 7 feet if you do a basement. And that basement has to have a fire rated partition, which a fire rated assembly between the basement and the upper floors. So if anything happens down there, it doesn't burn down the house, so to speak. So those are additional requirements. So a lot of times you have to bring more things into code compliance than not. If you're thinking about doing an accessory dwelling unit in your backyard, one of the important things to think about for most of your zoning for R5 and R6 specifically, you are limited to a footprint of around 560 square feet. If you are within a foot off of the property line, so you're in the back corner of your backyard, that can be 1.5 stories. And on that main floor, you can have no windows that face your property line. That also has to be a fire rated partition against the property lines. If you wanted to do that accessory dwelling unit with a full 2-story structure with a full second floor, you would have to be 10 foot off of all your property lines in the backyard. So they're great. We've had lots of conversations with them quite often. Thanks, Brian.
Great. Any last advice that you can give to our participants here before I let you go, Chad?
Yep. I would just say to take your time, enjoy the process. Don't fall into the trap of finding somebody that says they can start right away or whatever else. It's sort of a methodical process to go through. We see lots of examples in Arlington of people that have worked with that guy that said he could start right away, and that project sits and does nothing for long periods of time because they don't have permit approvals, they don't have the materials ordered properly, or whatever else. So take your time, enjoy the process, and schedule. And if you plan it out on paper very well, you'll have a successful project. And if you leave a lot of decisions to be had during the project, you'll be miserable or running off to the tile shop in the middle of the night to pick out tile. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chad. And again, please, if you want to see some of the great work that Chad has put out, just go to the landing page here in the expo, and then it will take you directly to their webpage. And thank you so much, and see you next time.
All right. Thank you, guys.